Welcome to the Blue Room post match. It's Dave Downey, it's Rob Vera, and it's Pete McFarlane. And Everton have lost 2-0 away at Anfield. Don't change the habits of a lifetime, lads, because quite embarrassing. I say embarrassing, maybe that's a little bit harsh. But no, I'm going to say, yeah, it was embarrassing by most of the players that come to Anfield in the hope of getting the result for Sean Dyche. And it's hard to say. It felt like we were doing something decent for the first half hour before Liverpool scored. But Rob, I'll come to you first. I think these are the things we're going to speak about sound a little bit less than hindsight, and they're things that we sort of kind of predicted because we got the 3 points against Arsenal. I think just before we started recording, you said something similar to that in terms of, well, taking 3 points from those 3 games for Sean Dyche's first as Everton manager. That's not actually too bad because the big ones come in Leeds and Villa at home in the next 2 games that we've got, but it still doesn't make things any easier to losing to them, especially given the form that they've had so far this season, because they've been crap as well.
Well, yes, and I want to make sure that I put that into a proper frame.
Actually, I do need to apologise that I've put far too many things in our listeners' minds that you've already said to me. So I'll let you say it how you want to.
No, it's fine, dude. No, I look. Whenever we do this post match, especially at this stage of the season, where gosh, it's become all too familiar where we're talking about what we have to do in terms of the mathematical gymnastics to figure out what survival looks like. We comfort ourselves at times with what a points return over a 2-game or 3-game stretch looks like, and we kind of try to make some peace with that. Like on the macro level, 3 points out of these 2 fixtures is more than I thought we were going to get, more than any of us thought we were going to get, surely. Maybe we could have talked ourselves into a point or 2 points, but we got 3. But on the micro level, let's make no bones about it, Dave. That was just yet another in a long line of limp dick performances at Anfield, and it's there's not really much more that can be said about it. I think, I mean, we're gonna try, obviously, but I think that as Matt and I talked about at the end of last week, we're so used to losing that we almost don't know how to talk about winning anymore, right? Like, and what I mean by that is that the Arsenal game felt like such a triumph that, and I'm not saying people were intentionally getting ahead of themselves, but I had this kind of jokey image in my head of the old like George W. Bush meme of the mission accomplished banner behind him on the ship, right in the middle of the Iraq War, like before things had really gotten bad. And look, I'm not, I don't want to say that in any way to be too critical of Sean Dyche. I think that, I suppose, it's a bit of a Rorschach test, isn't it? I mean, if you had doubts or you were really truly skeptical about Dyche, I'm probably slightly shaded into that camp. Then you can look at this and say, see, there wasn't much about them today. I mean, you got the new manager bounce, and predictably you watched a game where a Sean Dyche team, but let's be honest, the sins of this squad far predate Sean Dyche. An Everton team had absolutely nothing, zero, zilch moving forward, and they just didn't seem in it. I think I tweeted at 70 minutes, I'm like, God, 20 more minutes of this? I mean, I'd rather just take the 2-0 and be done with it already, because Everton did not look remotely capable. I don't want to say interested, but they didn't look capable of mounting any kind of counterattack. The best chance of the game, of course, falls, from a beautiful cross from Alex Iwobi, falls right on the head of the one guy, Dave, that you just absolutely don't want it to fall to, and that's Tom Davis.
I thought you were actually talking about when we hit the post and they go up to the other end and score. I was thinking,
we'll get to that. This trip to Anfield had all of the greatest hits. Everything from a close, almost goal that led to an actual Liverpool goal, as well as just missing a chance that was really, really hard to miss. You had, to me, which I'm sure we'll go on to talk about, one of the most shocking defensive displays I've seen from a center half in a while from Connor Cody, what we saw today. It was absolutely ridiculous. And that second goal, I mean, I keep watching it. I saw someone tweet on some stills from it and say that they'd watched it over again 15 times, and they weren't sure how Cody could have. It's like he had to try hard to miss that ball. I mean, that ball he practically escorted that ball through his own legs to Cody Gakpo to score that goal.
Well, what you wouldn't have heard about that, your end of the planet, would be Jamie Carragher actually defended him and said that he'd done that plenty of times himself, where you get to that position where you don't know what's behind you, so you either think the keeper can come out and get it and stretch his hand. He's obviously thought Pickford's going to do that, even though he's standing right in front of him.
Well, then
maybe it's the dreaded corridor of uncertainty where he's decided to leave it, rather than if he just put it on his foot and then just knocked it out, even just slided it out for a corner himself, then you can deal with it.
I certainly appreciate Jamie Carragher's willingness to defend a Liverpool season ticket holder like his boy Connor Cody. Okay,
probably his best mate.
What I don't, but here's the thing. Let's be intellectually honest about that. If that had been Yerry Mina or Ben Godfrey who did that today and just generally played awful, but especially in that moment, they would be absolutely getting roasted right now. This ability for Connor Cody to kind of operate in this Teflon Don manner where he's so like, I've never seen a guy like, somehow he got onto the England team, and that has been his shield against criticism for a long time during the season. Now he has been pretty bad for a while now. It's not like this is didn't predate Sean Dyche. It's been bad. I hope he gets dropped. I think if you're going to carry 4 center halves in your squad, like surely Yerry Mina or Ben Godfrey should be playing ahead of him, but whatever. I look, that's all that said, I mean, when we went down 1-0, and if you look at the totality of our attack throughout the game, and using the word attack to describe what we saw from Everton is probably it's probably a complete misuse of that word, but we were done at 1-0, and again, if there's one consistent thread throughout this season, it has been our consistent inability to score goals. I mean, that's we could take every advanced metric and every bit of analysis, every heat map that looks like a Rorschach test that I can't fully understand and see half the time, and you throw all those out the window. This side has a midfield that can stay up. It has a defense that, despite what we saw today, I still think can be organized in a meaningfully significant enough way by Sean Dyche to survive. What we don't have, though, and what the big question going forward is going to be, is can Everton stay in the Premier League with a championship level attack? And that is, and maybe not even that good. The inability of Calvert-Lewin to stay healthy is just, you feel it every time he's out. And it's just, it is night and day. What we saw against Arsenal, even though we only scored the 1 goal, and I just said goals are the goal return was the big issue. It was the complete inability to have any sort of of cohesion in that final third, any kind of ability to create a consistent threat, and certainly the rest of the midfield didn't paint themselves in glory today either. But Everton just have a major problem that they had one chance, a 31-day window to address, and they did not. Yeah. And so now the question gets back to whether or not Sean Dyche can work enough miracles to manufacture goals and manufacture a scenario where Everton survive.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point to make at the end of that. And I think that's what we'll be talking about in most post matches all the way through to the summer until the league finishes, and we're hopefully still in the Premier League division. Pete, the other things I wanted to get on to during this game was Ellis Sims started up front for us. I think Dyche had sort of mentioned that and hinted that might be the case, and obviously we've been talking about it quite a bit. When does he get his chance? When does he get his opportunity? At first, when I saw him on the team sheet, I was like, okay, this is a big chance for him. Also, I'm not saying this with any sort of hindsight whatsoever, but I was thinking, is this just a step too far for him? Now, I know he's had that decent time at Sunderland where I think he scored 9 in 17 games or something like that, or 7 in 19 games, something like that. And I was thinking, given the lack of options we are given, like Rob's just alluded to there, in terms of not signing what we needed to sign, i.e. a striker in January, I'm thinking, well, who else do you put in there? Mope's simply not going to go in there because he's 5'7", 5'8", and he's not going to compete in any sort of physical aspect. Certainly not a heading one with Liverpool. And then Ellis goes in, and it's really difficult. I find it difficult personally because, as you can imagine, you go on social media, people are slating the lad, saying he's not good enough anyway, and blah blah blah. After that's his first start of out of 2, and the last one he had was this time in 2021. But you know, I still felt at the start of that game, this lad's, he's a big boy. He can give these, if he can give these the run around a little bit, maybe, and it just didn't come to fruition. And I don't want to sit here and blame him personally for that, because getting him any sort of support was just non-existent, wasn't it? And I don't want to go in on Dyche either after 2 games, but I'm thinking, if that's what they worked at all week in training because Calvert-Lewin was out, that's really, really scary to me in terms of what we can create, relating again to what Rob was saying about scoring goals. How do we do it if he's the only other option?
Well, I think first of all, we need to a bit of perspective is needed in terms of this match and in terms of where we're at as a team, as a club. You know, we sort of alluded to the fact that going into these 2 games against Arsenal and Liverpool, I would have snapped your hands off for 3 points. I would have snapped your hands off for 2 points out of those 2 games. And I think, you know, I was personally against the idea of putting Ellis Sims in from the start. I thought that it would be too big of an occasion. Well, let's be honest. I mean, we've gone into Anfield derbies before when we've been the form team. I've gone into Anfield derbies before feeling really confident about getting a win, and we've ended up getting battered. You know, the Anfield derby for us is such a non-entity in terms of us actually turning up and putting on a performance. I'm not going to take anything from this game, and I mean that. I know it's easy and flippant to sort of just disregard it, but yeah. I'm not really. It literally, I went into this game just thinking almost this is a free hit. Like, as long as we don't get battered. Not that I'm saying that I'm accepting defeat in any way, shape, or form. But as I say, for me, these 2 games were as much about Dyche getting to know these players as anything else. And he'll be looking at those players, and he'll be looking at the ones who didn't step up, and he'll be looking at the ones who he can rely on. And
you know what, mate, before you carry on with that, and I know Rob's just agreed with you by the noise you made then, as if to nod at what you were saying, and I have to disagree with you both here, because in a way that's not as obvious as you think I'm going to say, as in, oh, it's still a derby, we still need to perform and whatnot. I get all that crap that we've been so shit going there for years. The only one we've won in the most Everton way ever is when none of our fans were there during the pandemic. But I felt like going there, and I'm not going to be as naive as to say confidence and all that, but I looked at the way Dyche played us against Arsenal. I thought, you know what, another week of what he's had there to have a fortnight of what he's showed us how to do, i.e. defend properly, make things compact. And that's the main word I think many of us have used, is that word compact, since he's been there. He knows how to do that. I thought that'll trouble Liverpool. And again, I look really naively saying that. But what I'm not saying is, I think, oh yeah, because we got that win at home against Arsenal, we should be going to Anfield and getting a draw or getting 3 points. But I still think I'm fair. It's fair enough for me to say that I think we should have done more in that match.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, but another thing to bear in mind as well, you know, from my perspective, is in terms of us being set up and in terms of us being harder to break down. I mean, both of Liverpool's goals came from counter-attacks where we were caught out from a corner, one from a free kick. So
as naive as you want that, isn't it? That is really poor.
And that's what it came down to. And the first goal is that it came down to pure pace, basically.
But he couldn't have been happy there, Dyche. He could not have, sorry to interrupt again, mate, but he could not have been happy taking nine players up for a corner. We've got a 2-on-2 when they turn, and well, let's face it, all 10 of their outfield players are faster than the 10 that we've got. So
well, yeah, absolutely,
they're going to be available with 4 fellas against our 2. I don't know what Pickford was doing, by the way. I think he was going off to get a pie or something from the other end.
I don't know what Mykolenko was doing.
He was absolutely good. I'm sorry to say it, mate, because I've had Obviously, we've had a lot of sympathy towards him, given what's happened in his country and whatnot since we've had him. But he's not good enough for the Premier League, in my opinion. And I've thought that quite some time. But sorry, mate, carry on with what you're saying then about that counter attack, because I completely agree that I bet you I'd be amazed if Dice was fine to have that corner set up like we did, because that is the exact problem we've had for so long, is the pace people have on the counter attack when we've got none.
Absolutely. And I think that one of the big issues as well is that in terms of, we were overloading the back post like we did against Arsenal. We hit the post, we have a second bite of the cherry. But what I think was pivotal in that is when the ball breaks the edge of the box, Seamus Coleman commits. And once he's committed himself for those 5 to 10 yards, once he goes into that space, he's leaving that space in behind. And I think that's what happened. So basically, because we were overcommitted for the corner in the first instance, but then we overcommitted with the second ball as well, with the loose ball. And I think that's what did us. And then you've got a situation where you've got Darwin Núñez, who, like, to be honest, the only thing you can do is run. Like, he's an absolute, he's done well in terms of, he's got good pace. You've got Mo Salah as well. I think it was like 4-on-1 in the end, wasn't it? Mikalenko, I don't have a clue what Mikalenko was trying to do. Everyone's talking about Pickford. You look at Mikalenko's positioning. The only player who's anywhere near Núñez, Mikalenko, he gets drawn to the ball, and I just don't understand what was going through his mind to be drawn to the ball when you're on a 4-on-2 situation. You've got to cover the space, and you've got to. He's got to be more aware of the two players coming in behind. He's got to look over the shoulder. Now, if Núñez does something spectacular and bends it in the top corner from the left-hand edge of the area, then fair enough. But as a defender, Mikalenko's got to be aware of what's going on behind him, and for him to commit like that, it just played right into Liverpool's hands. But as I say, that's an individual error, and for me, that just showed. I mean, this is Mikalenko. I hate singling out individual players, but Mikalenko for me is becoming a massive problem. One, because going forward he offers absolutely nothing, and maybe in Sean Dyche's sort of system we won't be as reliant on like an overlapping fullback. We're certainly not going to play with 3 at the back and wing backs. But even so, the one thing that you probably would give Mikalenko a little bit of credit for would be that over the course of the season he's had very decent games. I'd say decent. Defensively, but now I'm starting to see that crumble as well. I'm starting to see someone who's terrified of actually going anywhere near the ball. The second half, there was about 3 or 4 passes in the second half where he completely underhit them. He was in acres of space. He just looked like a rabbit in the headlights. Like he was absolutely terrified of going anywhere near it. But as I say, those decision making, the decision making from him today cost us. But then again, I can't blame him solely for in any way. I can't just totally pick on him. But what I would say is that if we're going to, I mean, as I say, against Arsenal, one of the differences today and against Arsenal was when Arsenal came at us, we sat back and we defended well. They couldn't really hit us on the counter attack because we did set up, quite deep, and we were obviously going for the set piece. We also had Calvert-Lewin to be able to hold the ball up a bit better. We were also getting runners from midfield. I think today with everything in terms of what Liverpool were doing, Liverpool were happy to just sit back and let us come at them, because they were confident that we had nothing. Like Rob said, we've got nothing in that final third. I think another thing we've got to bear in mind is that our illustrious owner came out a week before the transfer window ended, and he said, "We need a striker. We'll get a striker." Well, we needed one today, Farhad, and we didn't have one.
Yeah, Rob,
I can't believe we've gone this long without mentioning Idrissa Gueye's performance and his role in that goal as well.
Well, the entire midfield is actually what I was going to get on to next, because I, again, really naive thought before this, and I said it on Twitter, and the usual fucking Muppets come up half an hour later thinking that I'd said it during the game or after it. But I thought our midfield 3 there, as soon as I seen Liverpool's when the teams came out, I was thinking, our midfield 3 there, Dice must be looking at that thinking that's where we get something from this game, is by dominating that midfield. A lot of my friends who are Reds have said that to me as well when they saw Fabinho, who's been out injured for them for a long time now, Henderson, who can't move like he used to, and an 18-year-old kid against Gueye, Doucouré, and Onana. I'm thinking that's got to be Everton's win. That has got to be, even if we don't win this game, that's got to be the thing we come away from and saying at least we won that battle. And we can't. We lost it comfortably, mainly due to an 18-year-old kid taking the piss out of us.
Yeah, I look, we have so many, I don't know how many times we've talked about this, but this is such a squad full of predominantly flash players. And when I say that, I mean they are players who they'll do that thing like Decore did last week, for instance, and Gay, for instance, where they're like, oh, all we needed was a manager to come in and use their talents properly and what have you. Now, don't get me wrong. This is not on Sean Dyche at this point, 2 weeks in. And I'm definitely at the stage now where I think if not Sean Dyche, then who would keep us up, right? Yeah. But what I would say is that there's, you could say what you want about Frank Lampard, but like there's probably a decent reason why Decore hasn't played in a long time. There was probably a reason why it was a player like Gay basically had all of his remaining good years used up by PSG after we'd sold him, and he was available, and the fact that we did so, I think we focus a lot, and rightly so, on our recruitment from an attacking standpoint and where that lagged. But if you guys remember, at the end of the summer, there were a lot of people who said, well, we should have gotten at least one more attacker in, but all of the other recruitment was really good. Well, how do we feel about that statement today? Like outside of, and I even said at the time, like Onana was the only like kind of young, promising, high quality, real investment piece that we added. I'm overall fine with Tarkowski. That's, fine. I think he has not been the problem for me, but Cody, meh. Idrissa Gueye, I don't think he has had one or maybe two good games, and yet he does not even sweat whether he starts every week or not. Decore, I mean, absolutely, he had nothing today. We even going back to the beginning of last year, right before Lampard was appointed, I have to kind of do my timeline with where all of these Everton managers who just layer over one another to the point where I imagine Klopp was just looking to his left today and thinking, oh, there's another new guy managing Everton today. But like, we signed Patterson, who I've liked him in flashes, but he's also struggled at times and not been able to get settled. And he's had injury problems. Mikolenko stays fit, but I mean, other than a few good games here and there, he's been poor. And I don't know, like I'm so lost in the myriad of acquisitions and managers that it almost becomes so hard to figure out like who's more at fault, the players, the manager. And really the bottom line may just be that it's both. I mean, that we have not had good enough managers, and we've certainly not recruited well enough. And so if you only do that, and then you compound that bad recruitment on top of not having any goals in your side, you're left with all of these constant compromises, these holes in your sinking ship that you're constantly having to plug up by unplugging another hole somewhere else. And it gets to a point where you have to wonder, is the ship going to sink before you get to port? And that's what Everton are facing, is that they just have, even going back to the whole Ellis Sims thing, I think starting Ellis Sims was probably the better of two awful choices today. It's either Ellis Sims, who just came back from Sunderland on loan, or it's Neil Maupay, who does not fit in any way, shape, or form, not only in Sean Dyche's preferred setup, but he never fit in really well. Like, I don't know why we bought him, because he doesn't really fit in well with anything that we were trying to do. Mm-hmm. And so all those bad decisions come home to roost. And this gets into the bigger discussion of why we are where we're at, but today's performance was kind of par for the course in regards to all those things. The question becomes now, what are we going to do in these more meaningful fixtures coming up? Like, even if we had won none of the, like if we had taken 0 points from these two games, or we'd taken 6 points or 4 points from these two games, the games coming up, we're going to be the ones. It's four game stretch, I guess we could say. This is what's going to determine whether we stay up or not. Because, guys, I don't know if you've had a chance in recent. I think everyone has probably taken a look at the schedule. But if you look at the fixtures, just in terms of what we round out our season with, okay, like let's just take the last 4 fixtures. away to Brighton, home to City, away at Wolves, and home to Bournemouth. Okay. Now, those last two, you would think, well, yeah, surely we've got to be doing something there. But yeah, does anyone fancy us to hang with Brighton or City in any of those cases?
No.
You go a little further back than that. You look at April, home to Spurs, away to Manchester United, home to Fulham, who I think right now would absolutely wallop us, even at Goodison, away to Palace, home to Newcastle, and away at Leicester, who are scoring goals for fun. This is going to April and May have very, very little promising, fixtures in terms of promising returns to offer us. The business that we've got to do has absolutely got to start with Leeds and Villa. And if we can't get anything out of those, we're in real trouble because we're away at Arsenal. We've got to win, obviously, at home we've got to take points at home to Forest and even to Brentford, who are probably better than us right now. And so like all these things remind you that while the Arsenal win was great, and again, I still maintain the general point I made that, hey, 3 out of 6 points in these 2 games is decent, but you have to remember when you've lost previously at home to Southampton, when you've lost at home and dropped points at home to just absolutely terrible teams, that you almost have to win these ridiculously underdog type scenarios in order to just make up for those losses in situations where you shouldn't have lost or dropped points. And so we're in for a ride, and everyone already knew that. Today hurts, it stings, but now it's just got to be about Leeds. It's just got to be about these next few games, and Everton have to find a way. And this is going to be Sean Dyche's maybe his biggest test ever.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, it goes without saying that we can't lose either the next 2 games. Villa at home will be quite tough because it looks like they're getting things sorted out under Unai Emery. But the other thing, I was just looking at those fixtures then when you said how bad the last one was. The April all the way till we get to the end of May with the last game, which is a home to Bournemouth. Just want to ask you both like a really quick question. Just give me seconds of an answer to it before we carry on. But we have Bournemouth at home on the final day of the season. If I was to say to you that 3 points against them keeps Everton up, but you can't have anything else other than that offered to you, would you take it? Go to you first, Rob. Would you take that?
I'm sorry. You explain the question, Dave. Like, would I take?
Sorry, it was a really poorly said question. But what I was saying was, forget all the rest of the games up until the last one of the season. Would you take it? Everton's Premier League future relies upon them taking 3 points at home to Bournemouth on the final day. Would you take that? Yes or no?
Yes, because I'm not confident that. I'm actually more fearful right now of that game meaning nothing and we already be relegated by then. Like I'm not trying to be too dour. It's just I'm just looking at the fixtures that lead up to it. I mean, after like in that Wolves game, really, I think I mean, the Bournemouth game, it may be for all the marbles, but I'm telling you guys that away to Wolves the week before, that in all likelihood is going to be what determines whether we stay up or not, in some way, at least in terms of the final thing. But Pete, I'll let you answer that.
Yeah, I'd bite your hands off if we were going into that last game with a chance of staying up at this stage. I'd bite your hands off. But as I say,
with just a chance though, because I'm saying it's in our hands if we beat Bournemouth. Yeah.
Well, take it. But like Rob said, I think it will go down to the wire. I really do. We'll know more after the next 2 or 3 weeks. Once we've played Villa, once we played Leeds at the weekend, I think we've had so many games this season where we've looked at it and thought, well, like even going back to when we played Bournemouth twice in a week, and when we'd lost in the cup, we were all sort of saying, well, it's okay because we can go and beat them away, in the league, and then we've got those nice home fixtures against Southampton, against Wolves, against Brighton. Not that Brighton was a gimme or anything. So I think it's dangerous for us to just fall into the trap again of thinking that playing Leeds and Aston Villa at home are gimmies, because I think they're going to be 2 really, really tough games. But if we don't beat those 2 at home, and we've got to beat both of them, I think the writing's on the wall. And if we don't beat them, then we probably deserve to go down. I think at this stage of the season, for us to be on 18 points, if we can't beat Leeds and Aston Villa at home, I don't see much hope for us. But having said that, I think that I do think that Dyche will be able to get them to galvanise them and start grinding out some results. Whether
Yeah, I
it'll be
mean,
enough, we don't know.
I think tonight alarmed me much more in terms of what Dyche would have expected from that side, given what we saw against Arsenal, given how quickly he was able to get them into a shape and a formation and tactically aware of who you're playing against. And it was the side that was top of the league who could well go on and win the Premier League. But that division's shown us everything over the years, that you just simply can't roll over and carry on with that sort of feeling, those ideas in your mind when you go to another game when they've rolled you over, which I think that's exactly what Liverpool have done us tonight. I think actually the 2-0 defeat flatters us in many ways.
We have struggled against the rubbish side of the season, though, Dave. So tonight's not that much of a.
Well, yeah, that's the only dig I think we can have at them, because they're still only in mid-table and all that sort of thing. But
hey guys, one thing to consider if I'm gonna squint and say maybe this is part of the way Sean Dyche is trying to take a bigger picture look of at things. And I think some people probably speculated on this before the game, but like. Pete said before, Peter said before that like we don't want to call it, maybe we don't want to call it a free hit, but it kind of is a free hit. And
yeah,
regardless of what you want to call it, what have you, classify it however you want, but the result sort of bears that out. Right. And so if you sort of know going in that is, if you're evaluating your fixtures, and to the point that you guys are making, that it's not that Leeds and Villa at home are gimmies. When you're a side like Everton, there are no gimmies. We've shown that over and over again. There are absolutely no gimmies. But what you can say is that if I look at the next 3 fixtures and I'm away at Anfield and I'm home to Leeds and Villa, what are the most winnable scenarios for me? And those are the Leeds and Villa games. And so if that is what informed the decision to like not try to force Calvert-Lewin into a situation tonight, so be it. And no one wants to as a big fan of a player who has his own injury issues over the years, I can assure you that it's not fun to be in these scenarios where you're having to manage someone's physical, stature. I don't blame Calvert-Lewin. I don't blame anyone for injuries, because no one wants to be hurt. Everyone wants. I genuinely think that 99% of these players would rather play than be hurt, because being hurt sucks and it hurts, to simplify it. But what I would also say, though, is that Dyche has literally no margin for error. He has seen tonight that he has no viable striker other than Calvert-Lewin. So if that means managing him in a way that at times feels frustrating, and it may be even saying, do we need to play Calvert-Lewin away at Arsenal? I don't know. Like these are going to be those things that will determine, if you get into that mindset of, well, we've got to find a way to manufacture points. Well, manufacturing points is yes about the micro level of the game right in front of you at that time, but it is also about the bigger picture view of looking at your fixture list and saying, okay, these are my resources. This is the situation I've got. I've got a player that if I use him improperly, we need him a lot, but if I use him improperly, he's going to be hurt and then miss 3 more games that are much more winnable. I've got to make, pragmatic decisions. And if I want to give Dyche the benefit of the doubt, because he does seem like a smart guy. He does seem like a pragmatist. And so I'm hopeful. And by the way, I would be shocked if Calvert-Lewin is not starting next week against Leeds.
Right, gents, you're going to have to leave it there, because I think we're talking far too much after losing a game against Liverpool in Anfield. But as always, thanks for a late night post-match, which obviously we're very thankful that so many people listen to us say these sorts of things. But yeah, it's been a bit of a sober night. If you didn't care about a Merseyside derby, which I think is impossible, then tonight's probably the night you do that, just as these 2 fine gentlemen have explained there with the games to come for Everton. Thanks a lot for listening to us. As always, there's more stuff on the Blue Room, as there always is throughout the week. And do stick with the Toffees, because, listen, we've got to trust Sean Dyche to do something with us at Goodison in the next 2 weeks. Otherwise, we might be looking at the Championship. But yeah, let's try and stay positive and up the Toffees. Speak to you soon. Bye-bye.